Hello and welcome to episode 4 of me looking back at the top official rated National 1 horses from the back end of last season. Sorry it's taken a little while to get this final episode out, but there we go, we're out anyway now. So it's a smaller list than we looked at in the other few episodes. Typically the novice chases that come through a season, the ones that come out the other side, I do tend to find that it's a smaller batch. There's lots more in the novice hurdlers that have potential to go through. That's not to say that any of the novice chasers that aren't featured on this particular official ratings list aren't worth keeping an eye on. There will be a good amount of horses that will have been featured in people's slips that may have run and missed some of the festivals, maybe picked up a bit of a niggle that would still be of interest going forward. But for the purpose of this, we're just looking at the ratings. We're trying to pick the top specs off of there. So there will be a good number of novice chasers here that will feature this season that missed last season for whatever reason. But for the purpose of this, we're just looking at the top specs. And as I said, and I think in one of the earlier episodes, I tend to look for sort of top 10 as an early starting point. And I do think that the batch that we've got here of the novice chasers, although we've got at least one that won't be seen this season, I do think we've got a nice crop just to look at here. So before I quickly go into the horses themselves, it's nice to have a good look at the batch that we've got here. So we've got 8 of the 10 horses listed in here are 160 plus. There's a good split between the British and the Irish horses, and we've also, you can see that we've only got 4 7-year-olds in there, so they'll be going on to 8. The rest are 6 and younger. So it's a good crop. These are horses that we should hopefully be seeing over the next few seasons. So we'll start off with Kalashnikov. He's the one that's already highlighted. No video clips put together for this lad. He came to fruition at Aintree, didn't he, when Amy Murphy finally stepped him up to 2.5 miles. We don't know what would have happened at Cheltenham in the Arkle, unseated rider, and he was very unfortunate because he was kicked off the horse. I don't think he would have won an Arkle, but then again, I didn't think Duke Geneva probably would have won an Arkle. I do think that this horse is a 2.5 miler. I've mentioned this numerous times before, but Amy Murphy had Kalashnikov's full sister, a horse called Kalane. Got the best tune out of her over 2.5 miles. I think Kalashnikov's going to be exactly the same. I don't think ground is as big a thing for him as it may have looked last season, but he obviously does want a bit of cut. Ryanair is the aim for this season. Amy Murphy said that, so that's good that he's going to get a campaign at the trip that he should be going in. Interesting to see what sorts of races he goes for to pick up en route to that. The first one we've got 4 video clips in here is Dynamite Dollars, so quite a nice little line in with Kalashnikov, given the fact that they raced against each other at Kempton. He did miss the Cheltenham Festival in the spring through an injury, but I just think it's important to have a little look at this horse because the way he's going to be campaigned this season, I think he might come into a bit of an anti-post play. I think he jumps really well. The first initial thoughts of him from last season, watching his races and watching how he progressed, was I did sort of tarnish him thinking he might be a horse that's better right-handed. The reason I'm saying it like that, and it's much more of a might now, is that might not be the case. I think he actually probably can go left. This is the Arkle trial at Cheltenham, so we've got Defi de Soul in behind. Layla obviously goes on to win. We can watch Defi de Soul make a mistake at this because we haven't got independent clips of him, so you'll see the big jump, and that's him out of there. But Dynamite Dollars here, there was a lot of pace on, there was challenging for the lead. If you consider the fact that, I know Layla blew up in the Arkle itself, if you consider the fact that Dynamite Dollars is still best of the rest, and we've got Defi behind, he made that big mistake at the last, big over jump, probably wasn't as bad a performance as I may have marked it down as. This run at Sandown was ultra impressive for me, and it was something that I hoped he would have done. I did back him on the day. I couldn't have Layla as a real decent 2-mile chasing prospect. I know I slipped up at Aintree following him in there. But this is a performance against the Newer. It was wet that day. Layla wasn't going to like that. I've said before about the rain. I don't think that's when he runs his best. Dynamite Dollars, gutsy here. Real decent jumping round from him. And Anua obviously did go on and win at Aintree. So wouldn't be the greatest performance from Anua at Aintree. That won't be a classic to go down by. But, you know, it's not terrible form, I don't think. And we've got to look at this. He is a novice chaser, so there's progression that's going to go on there. He expanded so much from a novice hurdler into a chaser. So this is at Kempton when it's missed. It's tricky to know how much we can read into the latter part of it because they do disappear now. But you can see that Kalashnikov was off the bit first. We can see that Dynamite Dollars was being ridden into the home straight as well. That wouldn't have been his cleanest of jumps, but you can see he's pulling away from Kalashnikov here. Mentioned about him before that he is a 2.5 miler, but he's not short speed. He was in a Supreme and he ran well in the Supreme, almost won it. I think this was a good enough performance from me from Dynamite Dollars. at the trip for a horse that I think was looking like he was going in the right direction. He's miles off of a top grade horse, let's not forget that, but he's where he is in the ratings, and I think that's fair. He does need to take another big step forward, but I think there is a chance that he could probably do that. You could see there they were well clear of the rest. Now, this is the race that St Calvados ran in the previous season before the Arkle. Dynamite Dollars was a long odds on short favourite here. Alan King's Ballywood's in second. I thought this was a poor performance at first glance from Dynamite Dollars. I thought this is where my left-handed thing was coming in. I thought he would have won by more than this. He has been ridden, he has picked up, and he has gone and won the race, but he should have done with the rating that he was. The fact that he's obviously got the niggle and then gone into spring and not been able to run, maybe that was picked up here, and maybe he's a horse that doesn't really seem to do a lot in front. He does definitely need to progress this season, there is no doubt in that, especially when you look at his ratings. If he's going to make into a champion chaser, which is what I'll come on to in a second, you know, he needs to step up. He's got to be a stone, isn't he? He's got to get better. So that'll put him as a 170 horse. And that's, if Altior does end up there, then, you know, that's going to be a fierce race. And you don't just win champion chases. But Nichols knows what to do with these types of horses. I touched on his progression from hurdles into fences. He was 132 over hurdles, as we can see here. That was a massive step forward. Hopefully he can do that again. The key with this horse, the reason why I've made the clips, and I think it's worth talking about him, is that Paul Nichols has said, he's just made it black and white, that Dynamite Dollars runs in the Denman Chase at Newbury, so that's beginning of the next season, and then he runs at Cheltenham in the Champion Chase. So he's having a prep run, and then he's going to go in the Champion Chase. Now, I'm not saying that he is going to go and win a Champion Chase. There's going to be some worldies in there. He'll be miles behind them on figures. However, if he does step forward, he's going to be lightly campaigned. That race is going to be the one that's in mind as his pinnacle for the season. He's 50 to 1 now with Hills. You can boost that. I think you get 55 to 1. I cannot see how this horse, if he runs well enough in the Denman Chase, which, you know, Altior's got the option of going back to that race if things don't work out in the King George. There will be some other horses that will go in there. But unless he's completely disgraced in there in terms of being pulled up or makes howlers of mistakes, if he runs okay with any sort of credit in that race, the Denman Chase, which I expect that he will, I don't think he's going to win it, I think he'll run well, he will not be a 50 shot. So there's worse anti-post punts out there, given the fact that if Altior wins the King George and he's not in there, we've touched on Chacun Poursoir when I looked at the normal chases, but he's about the sort of price that he should be for the race. So loads of progression from Dynamite Dollars you'd hope for this season. If last season was the only season that he's going to progress, then, you know, he's got too much to find. He's not good enough to do it this season. But I like the fact that he's going to be lightly campaigned, and I just think he'll be interested, and he might have slipped off the radar a little bit by then. We'll move on to Laricheburg. So I touched on there's definitely one horse we won't see this season, which unfortunately is top of the game. That came out this week. But Laricheburg, there's been reports from Joseph O'Brien that we definitely won't see him this year. And the impression that I got is that we probably won't see him this season. But that hasn't been completely ruled in. It's just the fact that he will definitely not make the racetrack this year. So, like a Dynamite Dollars, he might end up going fresh into Cheltenham. Then the big thing with this horse is he looks like he's good ground dependent. The form is working out really well. The fact that he was close to Delta Work, the fact that he's beaten us and them by distances the 2 times before, all reads really nicely. But he has had a setback, and he wouldn't be the sort of horse that I'd be looking at as a champion chaser unless the ground came up good and unless he managed to get a prep run in. But at the moment, he might not make this season, so he wouldn't be one I'd be wanting to get stuck into. Okay, well, I think there was supposed to be a mark-up for that horse there, so little blip. That was for a Plutard, so the error that I've picked up there is either the link to the Racing Post page or something else. But Plutard was so impressive at Cheltenham in the Close Brothers. Was just a really, really well handicapped horse. Probably the second best performance of the festival behind Tiger Rolls in terms of how emphatic the victory was. I think he's a nice horse. He fell at Punchestown, I believe. He's 160 rated, and he is only a 5-year-old. He has been a little bit intermittent before, which was last season. We'll have to see how much more he progresses this season. But the fact he's a 160 horse as a 5-year-old, the only way is really up with him. Does need to take that little step forward. And I do often find that 5-year-olds into their next season chasing, sometimes that tends to be a bit of a leveller for him. So he might run well, his mark might move about, and he might have to sit himself in handicap company. But he's one to keep an eye on over the next couple of seasons, I would have imagined. Before I drop back to Lost in Translation, we're on Duke to Geneva, so we'll go with him. He's a horse that I touched on at the beginning of this that I probably couldn't have seen winning an Arkle. I do think 2 mile is the trip for him. I said that when he was a novice hurdler. Everyone was banging on about, oh, wait till this boy goes over further. But I didn't see that myself. It will be interesting to see what they do with him this year, what they try and make him into, because you've got the option of champion chaser, or if he keeps getting spanked at 2 miles, then they will probably try and step him up a bit, maybe make him into a Ryanair, or see if he does really stay the 3 miles in time. He's just quite patchy, his form. I know obviously he got the back-to-back wins by winning at Gowan at Cheltenham. That was a really messy Arkle, but he did win it well enough to suggest that he would have won the race probably anyway. Like I say, he just doesn't win often enough from me. We've got 11 races under rules, 3 victories in there. He's a very nice type. I might be really overcritical of him at the moment, but that's where my stance is with him. I don't see him as a champion chaser. I don't see him as a potential Gold Cup horse. I don't see him as a Ryanair winner. Just don't think he wins enough. But he does look progressive, and maybe things are starting to get better for him. But we'll touch on Lost in Translation now. So he was running over the sort of middle trips, over fences this season. I actually fancied him for the RSA from quite a way out, the early start of the season when he was running at Newbury behind Le Bagois, which we'll pick up on here. So this is the turn in for Newbury. It's a long straight in, but gives me enough time to talk. We've got a Lost in Translation in front. We've got Le Bagois and we've got Talk is Cheap in there. Now, Le Bagois, Lost in Translation rematch in the next clip, which is over a slightly different trip at Newbury. They dropped down a little bit, but it's a nice performance on Lost in Translation here. Decent sized horse. And I think he just looked like a typical Tizard horse that probably needed his first run of the season. I fancied him for the RSA even before this. I liked the fact that he showed some speed in his novice hurdling career. Then they stepped him up in trip and he looked better at Aintree for stepping up in trip. And I thought he would make into a 3 mile chaser. Now, the fact that he wasn't in the RSA at the forfeit stage, I think Tizard even made a comment that he probably should have left him in there, but they could have supplemented him. It might stand him in good stead going forward that he was campaigned over the intermediate trip. But you can see here he's a horse that looked like he was staying on. You can't knock Le Bagois because she's got some of the best novice form from the season, but Lost in Translation here was decent. It looked like a horse that probably needed the run, but it's really good franking form for Le Bagois. She's been a worldie last season. We'll see her in quite a few clips here. Now, this is the race where I mentioned a few of them are reopposed. The key point in here is that Lost in Translation walks through the flight, and that is as bad a mistake as you'll see without a horse being pulled up. Credit to Robbie Power in this instance. He's had a little feel for the horse. He thought, let's go and see how we jump the next, and then we'll see how hard we can go into him. He's seen a stride there. He's got a decent jump, and he's given him a go. So this is over 2.5 miles. I think he's an out-and-out stayer. I think he looks like a Gold Cup prospect this season. And you can see here that Robbie Powers, after jumping the last, giving him a little bit more of an easier time. We'll see Le Bagois goes off with it. We'll see Talk is Cheap is there, making up the inroads to get into second place. But Robbie Power wanted to see and wanted to test a little bit there. And I think because of the fact that it was over 2.5, the fact that it was such a bad mistake, he did exactly the right thing with him there. But it wouldn't be enough to say, look at this performance and look how far behind he was behind Le Bagois to suggest that he's not a good horse. He's still run really well. Now, this is at Cheltenham in the Dipper, and we can see here that Barry Geraghty on Defi de Soy kicks on in front. So he's kicked on before they've got to the last. He's gone in front of Lost in Translation. I think a lot of people were amazed at this point that Lost in Translation managed to get back up and win this race because, again, it was over 2.5. I know the uphill finish at Cheltenham means it would have been a bit more stamina-laden, but possibly Defi lost this race because he went in front too soon. But Lost in Translation wasn't stopping at the line there. We see the pair of them reoppose at Sandown. Vindication's in third. He's had a win procedure, and they're hoping that he comes back to a bit more like his old novice hurdle form for chases this season, but he's got a big step up to make. But you can see here Barry Geraghty is much more conscious with Lost in Translation, thinking I'm going to stalk him a bit more, and he doesn't want to make him hit the front too early. So after this flight at Sandown, there's a good run up the hill to carry on going through. Barry's obviously decided to wait until after the last to kick off in front of him. He does that. Lost in Translation is starting to dig in a bit there, but Defi's not giving it up. And I think from that point, Barry had already made his decision that in the JLT, he was going to wait with Defi de Soy to the final flight. Now, we can see him here. They're going into this last flight. No, sorry, that's the second last. They've gone into the flight there. Barry Geraghty's holding on to Deffy. Now, there's a short run in the JLT at the festival after the final fence, and there is in the Dipper, as you can notice in these clips here. But Barry Geraghty's held him together there. He's managed to not jump in front of the last because he made a bit of a hash of the second last, but timing-wise, it's exactly the time to deliver him. That's why he's been emphatic when he's gone clear of this horse. And, it was just a cracking ride from Barry Geraghty. It was a mistake by myself not going for him on the day because Barry had figured it out, but it's easier in hindsight. So the early clip here at Aintree, you can see some of the horses towards the back are taking not a real keen interest, but they're taking a little bit of a pull. And this is the importance of what I want to show you in here. So Topville Ben did all the donkey work, went out in front. We can see Top of the Game in behind. Got Mr. Whipped in there as well in cheap pieces. But you look how these horses are travelling. So Top of the Game is a real travelling, smooth horse. Lost in Translation is picking up nicely for Robbie Power, and you can see that he's going away, and he's got the race in the bag at this point, hasn't he? Now, the fact that they were held up early, and this has turned into probably a little bit of a sprint, I think that's why Lost in Translation looks even more impressive. But you've also got to take into consideration this can't have been Top of the Game at his best. No disrespect to Topville Ben or Mr. Whipped, but look at the margins they are away from Top of the Game. He was clearly over the top at this point, but Lost in Translation hasn't been asked, and he's still got 7 or 8 lengths to find of him, even if he was in his prime form. So that was Lost in Translation's first run at the 3 mileage trip. He looks a proper Gold Cup type, doesn't he? I think he'll be even better around Cheltenham with a testing track. He's going to run an intermediate chase at the beginning of the season. I think that'll probably be at Carlisle before he takes his hand in the Betfair chase at Haydock. That'll be a track that I think will suit him because he does look a speedy sort. So he's one to get very excited about this season. Now, we saw a couple of clips of Deffy DeSoy in there. I won't need to go through the whole Top of the Game clip, but we can show you his Exeter performance off the Top of the Game clips. He ran so well last season, Deffy, and like I say, Barry Geraghty was smart. I don't give Barry Geraghty the credit he deserves sometimes, but he was smart the way that he learned at Sandown what to do, and he made it pay at Cheltenham. We'll see him in the Chacun Pour Soi performance when he was dropped back to 2 miles, but they have decided they'll be going down the Ryanair chase route with this horse. He's a 2-time festival winner. The race looks doable for him off the mark that he already is, and he's going to progress into something a bit better this season, you think. But he has had a lot of racing, given the fact that he was a juvenile, so I'm just not sold on how much more this horse can improve this season. But he's one that obviously is going to be in a lot of people's shortlist for one to keep an eye on. Now, of the 3 big boys that went into the RSA, we've got Delta Work, Santini, and Top of the Game. Now, unfortunately, Top of the Game, the winner of the RSA, won't be seen this season. It's a minor enough injury that he'll race again, but it's major enough that he'll miss the rest of the season. So we can take a look at Delta Work in here. He was the youngest of the trio going into the RSA. Now, he ran off over shorter trips to begin with at the beginning of the season. And the reason I've picked up this first clip early on is you can see here that he's had to set his own fractions early. Probably wouldn't be ideal for this type of horse, but when you have a classy animal running over fences for the first time, you think, do you know what, we just don't want to mess about. We'll get him out in front, let him pop, make sure that he doesn't get in any trouble and all those sorts of things behind. But you can see here that he looked like he would have needed the run from this. He's having to be kept up to his work to go and to get this victory. He's not the tidiest of jumps at the last there. But, we're talking about a horse that was, I think he was sent off favourite for the RSA. And this is his debut performance over fences. But it was smart enough, and it looked nice, but he progressed really nicely through each run. So here we've got Laricheberg on the inside. This is over 2.5. I think this must be the Drimmore. And we can watch Davy Russell loses his irons as they smash this. You can see his left foot slips out, and he ends up riding this horse without his foot in the stirrup. So this is some serious craftsmanship from Davy Russell, but some serious response from the horse as well. And we saw what Laricheberg did after that to keep the form going. Now, this is Delta Work against an onslaught of Gigginstown horses. This wasn't probably the most emphatic of victories because you could see the yellow cap on the inside was near enough to him. I think it was a good enough performance, and you can see he's going on to win his races. And this is what I mean about his progression. You can see that he's getting better, he's getting better, he's getting better. Doesn't look a typical stay-in chaser in terms of size and stature, but that can come in time for the next season. He's travelling the best of the trio here. I think for people that have backed Delta Work in this, why Davy Russell didn't try and send him on into that flight, I don't know. Maybe he knew that he didn't have as much horse as it maybe appeared. It's a good battle between this trio going up there. You can't really say any of them have lost anything in defeat with the fact that they're going. You can see Delta Work there of the trio is the one that's sort of dropping out a little bit. But he is a year younger. You can see the size difference that I was mentioning. You know, he's got time to progress and he's got time to develop into a bigger horse. So not all is lost with Delta Work. I can see why people would have an interest in him, but for me, he's not one that I'd be looking at being a top stay and chase of the season. He'll run in those races. I'm sure he can be competitive in a few of them, given the fact that he's 6 going on 7. But at this point, I don't see him as a finished article, to be honest. I was surprised he found as little as he did at Cheltenham. Now, Santini's a horse that I've liked for a long time. Even when he was a novice hurdler, he just looked built like a chaser. This season, some of the other horses had sort of caught up with him in terms of size and stature. But he's going to be going for the Hennessy, the Ladbroke Trophy now. He's at Newbury. This was his debut at Newbury. Managed to catch a word with Nico on the way back to the winner's enclosure after this day, and he told me that this was literally the first thing he'd done. He pretty much hadn't been out of his box. It was a serious performance that day. He loves it round Newbury. I know it's going to be a serious weight-carrying performance, and my biggest worry would be his stablemate OK Corral in there, because I think he'll be getting 12 or 13 pounds in the handicap. But Santini looks an absolute Hennessy type. Stick him in there. He'll come back and he'll run in the Denman Chase. So all the talk I was mentioned before about Dynamite Dollars, he's going to run in the Game Spirit, not the Denman Chase, because it's a longer one. So yeah, that'll be it for him. He'll probably run it in the Hennessy, he'll run it at Newbury again in the Denman Chase, and then he's going to go for the Gold Cup. So this is another clip containing Le Bagois, who obviously can't be forgotten given she gets the mare's allowance. Top of the game, the RSA winner goes on and heads him here, but you can see Santini's a good few lengths behind. It's a speed track at Kempton. It isn't really going to suit. And from this flight here, you can see the way that he stays on into the line, which, you know, I thought was a good enough performance from Santini, considering it wouldn't be a track that would suit. Top of the game threw this away by going in front. I don't know what that's about, but you can see the pair of them there. Take that together. Le Bagois' gutsy. She went on and won another Grade 1 over in Ireland. I know she got beat at Aintree, but, you know, this is good form for all three of them, I think. The Feltham normally is. We'll see the RSA again here. Obviously, we see Delta Work travelling. If we focus on Santini on the left, we know that Top of the Game is travelling into that. But I thought here, Santini going into this last, I thought he was going to kick on. And that's the only slight reservation with him I have, is just this little bit of speed towards the end of it. But like I said, I don't think any of them have really lost a great deal in defeat. I think Santini, the extra 2 furlongs, will do him a favour. And I think the Hennessy and that Denman Chase at Newbury are just made for him. There'll be lovely preparations for going into a Gold Cup. And I see him as a big player. I think that's what he's there to do. And it's great for the owners. They bred this horse themselves as well. So Chacun Pour Soi, we touched on him in the Chasers section. So we've got the video clips already proven up for him. The main thing really to talk about with this horse is the fact that he was a standout winner in his chase debut. That came at March. You know, Willie Mullins isn't going to stick him in there unraced as a novice into an Arkle, but he probably would have won that. Performance at Punchestown was standout. He's beaten an Arkle winner, he's beaten a JLT winner in there. He is 7 going on 8. We need to see what he does this season. He's obviously been fragile and maybe one that's been tricky to keep right, but with normal progression, and I know the age thing, he's already older than some of the other ones that will be maybe going around that sort of division, the 2-mile chasing, but with normal progression, given the fact he hasn't had many races, if Willie Mullins can keep him sound, obviously he's a champion chase player. The price is about right for him anti-post. I'm just keen to see this horse run a couple of times again, and you know, there's a few early season options for him that will be interesting to see how he performs. They don't tend to be the deepest of races, but it'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of him and Min to keep those two apart. I mean, Underso probably won't be running, so there's some other races that could be taken in by them. But I think Duke de Geneva is going to come over for the Tingle Creek. That's the vibes that I'm getting. So Chacun Pour Soi would stay over in Ireland. There's the Hillyway Chase that he'll probably go for there. Just be interested to see what they do with him. I think they'll just try and get as many races in as they can without having to keep him too competitive until it gets to the festival, but he's a live one for the champion chase, given the fact that Altior might not end up there. And even if Altior does, Chacun Pour Soi's performances this season have been good enough to suggest that he could still be a threat. I'll put a link up to the other 3 episodes. These are the 4 that are done. Again, any feedback, any comments about these horses, any ones that I've missed out, or anyone else you want to talk about, just let me know. I appreciate your guys' support. And I'm going to try and keep up getting some more decent content. So anything you'd like me to do or any feedback on the things that I've done, like I say, appreciate all of that. And thanks again.